I'm Kevin Klein. Welcome to another edition of Inside Winnipeg Politics. Today I'm joined by our Winnipeg Sun columnist, Jeff Currier, because we want to talk about the crumbling walls at Winnipeg City Hall. We have seen a lot, not only in the pages of the Winnipeg Sun, but online and in other media, about kind of the crumbling of the administration. We had Brian Mays, a city councillor, have to use a Freedom of Information Act to get information that he hasn't got yet. I spoke to him, haven't seen it yet. And then you've got a long-serving member of the hand-picked inner circle, if you will, the Executive Policy Committee, Sherry Rowlands, who steps away from the EPC, claiming no information being shared, secrets happening, meetings going on. And I think I know what she was kind of talking about. I don't know for sure because she hasn't said. But it really looks like to me, Brian, because, and John Orlico even came out in the media and said, no, he wouldn't want to be a part of this EPC at all. He thinks that what Roland said is absolutely true. There's too much secrecy. There's too much happening behind closed doors. So really, are we seeing the dismantling of a mayor's administration that came in with the lowest percentage ever for a mayor? When you look at how many people were running, and I was one of them, I agree. But when you look at it, I think it was less than 30% of the vote he got, like 20 some odd percent of the vote.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin, this is a long-standing problem at City Hall, though. It didn't start with Scott Gillingham. It's more pronounced, perhaps. We're more aware of it. The public is becoming perhaps more aware of it. Your predecessor on City Council, Paula Havixbeck, complained about this very thing. So we're going back a decade,
Mhm.
and so it was under Sam Cates, it was a problem. Under Brian Bowman, it was a problem, and now under Scott Gillingham, it is a problem. We're on City Council. The people of Winnipeg, I think, believe that the city of Winnipeg is run by the mayor and city council. Who really runs the city of Winnipeg?
Well, I can tell you that as a city councilor, and you would know this covering the news, I was very vocal about the fact there's secrets, that you can't get information. If you were a city councilor, and this will tell you who runs it, and you wanted information on a project, we weren't allowed to phone. Like he says, you can just phone any director. You're actually not allowed to do that, or you weren't when I was there. You had to send an email to a general email box called CAO Inquiries. And they had 10 to 15 business days to respond and give you the information they wanted to give you. So the reality is, and to answer your question, and I think everybody already knows this, it's the administration that runs City Hall. But I also want to point out that it's the staff within the mayor's office. They have to take a lot of the blame. I blame the mayor and especially Scott Gillingham because I tried several times to get EPC taken out. I tried to put in motions where information had to be made available to city councilors. Scott Gillingham, Janice Lukes, they all voted against it every single time. So he takes the blame because the buck stops with him. But his staff are a problem as well. And I consider that to be a part of the administration. But how do you fix it?
Well, when you have certainly councillors who are not on EPC over the years have complained about this.
Mhm.
When you've got a member of EPC who has the same complaint and walks away from executive policy committee, and
And the money.
there's a financial penalty that Sherry Rollins has paid. We've talked about whether politicians have principles or not. Well, whether or not you happen to agree with her political stances, it was a principled thing for Sherry Rollins to do, to walk away, because that's money out of her pocket.
Yep.
That she's walking away from that, and good for her for speaking up. It highlights the problem, though, when an EPC member says, look, we can't get information from the administration. We're not being told. We're all of a sudden being 30 minutes or an hour before we're supposed to vote on something slapped on our desk, and we're told to rubber stamp it. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And as you said, Kevin, the administration is supposed to do the bidding of the mayor and council, not the other way around. But it has long been like that. Talked to in conversation with city councilors from decades ago, and they said the first thing they do every morning is walk down the hall and schmooze some of the administration people to so that if you need something from them, well, you got to go down and say to the administration people, what do you need from me? It should be the other way around. Shouldn't it? Shouldn't it be the administration people coming down to the city councilor saying, what direction do you want us to take the city? So it is a backwards model, and I don't know how you fix that, because the mayor and city council are in a position to fix that. The mayor is the mayor has a lot of power in this city,
Mm-hmm.
and if department heads are not obeying the will of the mayor and council, he can fire them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just fire people who aren't. If you don't do what the boss asks you to do, the boss should fire you. Right?
Right.
In any work environment.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen at 510 Main Street for reasons we're unable to fathom, except that that once people get elected, there's a fear of the administration, the retribution, and I think there's a fear of the power of the unions at City Hall too, because CUPE particularly, as you know, wields a very big stick at City Hall.
It's a very big stick, and there's contract talks coming up and such. And I think you really nailed it. I'd like to give Sherry credit, because I mean, Sherry and I didn't see eye to eye all the time at City Council, but we would always be able to debate things and not fight personally and such. But you're right; she walked away from extra cash. Her own salary. She took a cut in now because she's not a part of the mayor's inner circle. She loses expenses because they get extra expenses. And when you're a part of EPC, I mean, you're flying wherever you need to go, right? You have all that extra money. It doesn't show up on your counselor expenses because you're doing it as an EPC member or whatever. I mean, how many times does Jeff Brawadi fly to New York, and for what? But he gets to fly there because he's the finance guy, right? It's all. It's really built. It was Brian Bowman, and maybe you remember this. Brian Bowman told the media when he first ran for mayor that he wanted to get rid of EPC because it created corruption. But when he got in, he never got rid of it.
No, it would have been awkward from a legislature, because it would require an act of the provincial legislature. But that could have been made but there are ways around that.
Yeah.
He could simply have declined to name people to executive policy committee. He could have asked for a vote among his colleagues to select EPC. Instead, he maintained the strong mayor model and picked his own inner circle, and never really did fulfill that promise.
So what do you think is going to be the fix for that? Because I mean, in the past, when we've had these debates, people from the business community would come out. I think it was especially Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce once came out, who now one of their staff works for Mayor Gellingham, who was vehemently opposed to getting rid of EPC. Now, of course, that guy works for Mayor Gellingham, but and we still have EPC, and we hear all these issues going on within City Council. At what point? And I know I heard from a couple of city councilors that even with the police chief debacle. And this really is a debacle. I mean, we've known for how long that Danny Smythe was going to retire. It was the worst kept secret in the world. It wasn't even a secret. He made it public a year before. And they're still looking for a police chief. I don't buy that. There's something wrong with that. And why they had to get outside counsel to say they did it right doesn't make any sense to me. But I know some councilors have requested a meeting with the police board to be told what's happening so they could be briefed on the situation. But that doesn't happen. And I don't know how you fix that, Jeff. I mean, because we keep electing the same people. If you look at people that have been on council for a long time, they've had the power. They could have gone to the premier of the day and asked for it's a change to the Winnipeg Act. That's all it is.
Right.
That's all it is.
Could have been done.
Could have been done.
If the mayor of the day, if Mayor Bowman at the time, or if Scott Gillingham today went to the premier and said, "Look, we want to do away with EPC," the premier is not going to stand in their way.
Right.
The premier is going to say, "Okay, we'll get to work on a piece of legislation and we'll get this done in the next session for you." Done. It would be done. So the lack of will to change the way we do business at City Hall, the way we spend money, the lack of accountability, the administration running and CUPE running City Hall instead of the mayor and city council, the will to put the brakes on that just doesn't seem to be there, and it's baffling. really. It's mystifying because it's a disservice to the taxpayers of Winnipeg.
You know, they spent all that money to put Portage, Maine on a ballot one time,
Mm-hmm.
only to reopen it now, which I don't, it really doesn't, like, whatever. I know it's this big argument and this big heated thing, but really, I don't think most people care.
Well,
Um,
reasonable people can disagree about the merits of reopening Portage and Maine, and we're not going to know the full impact until it actually happens. But
exactly.
it went to the voters of Winnipeg, and the voters of Winnipeg overwhelmingly said no.
Right. And we ignored that. And well, we didn't. Politicians ignored that. So my thought is, I would like to see a city councilor be bold and move a motion to put EPC on the next ballot to see if people want it. Maybe tax, because you hear from most taxpayers, they don't want EPC. They know it breeds corruption. Of course, it breeds corruption. And of course, it breeds this secrecy, and it breeds this power model, like it's a vacuum, right? That's power is centralized.
Right.
Um,
Well, and my city councilor, for example, is not on EPC. So I know my city councilor is on the outside looking in.
mhm.
And as a voter, I feel that I'm not being well served by that.
Right, and I think that's a fair statement, right? Because if you're on EPC, chances are you get more things in your ward. That's what happens, right? Because when it came budget time, EPC had to support the budget. That's going to be the big question, and I will wrap it up here, is that on January 29th, the city of Winnipeg has to pass their budget. I wonder now if these city councilors that have stood up against the lack of information, if they're going to stand up against the lack of spending controls and vote the budget down. That's going to be a real test of Gillingham. That's going to be a test of the administration because they have an opportunity now. I remember when I was there once, the last year I was there, I gathered a whole bunch of people. Everyone was going to vote no. We had special meetings. Janice Lukes was part of it. Oh, and she was all on our side, and then she got there and she voted in favor of Bowman's budget, right? And Gillingham. And it changed the vote. But there is an opportunity for the city councilors to demand real change by voting no to this administration's budget and making demands of saying, no, we want to see spending cuts of 2% across the board. And we want to see the elimination of EPC. Or we want to see a motion demanding that we get access to all information on a regular and timely basis.
Oh, yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't hold out too much hope that this budget will be defeated, even though it probably should be.